Hello and welcome to another voiceover video. I know I just did a voiceover video, but I felt like this piece we really needed some commentary on because holy crap, this piece goes through a lot of changes. You can even see here how many different sketches I start out with. This piece was commissioned for an upcoming art book collaboration thingy that's fantasy themed, and so I was kind of in these sketches exploring what do I want to do. I kind of knew a general vibe that I wanted. I wanted it to be in a forest, some sort of fae, and I wanted it to feel sort of like mystical, I guess. But other than that, I really had no idea. Beginning here is like going through so many different sketches, just trying to figure out what I wanted, and it took a while to finally land on something that I was somewhat okay with, somewhat happy with, even though I wasn't 100% happy. So I feel like the process for this piece is kind of what happens when you're not exactly in the flow, or just when you haven't been able to nail down a concept right off the bat, which happens a lot in art. And sometimes art is messy and it requires a lot of changes throughout the whole process in order to land on something that you actually want. And I think we did end up closer to what I want, but holy crap, it changes a lot in both all of these sketches you just saw and somewhat in the concept. So my initial idea for this piece in the concept, you guys may have seen me do on stream, because this is kind of the section that I was doing on stream. I was thinking she would be sitting in the forest and maybe have a little bit of like a moon pool or a glowing pool in front of her, and then the moon would be behind her through the trees, kind of like dripping, almost as if it's like dripping into the pool. And she was going to be a fairy with these like drooping wings, but you'll see later on that this changes quite a bit. Or of course, if you have seen the final piece, then you'll know what it turns out as, because it's not quite the same. But also, even in terms of color schemes, I thought, oh, maybe I'll kind of go with a similar inspired color scheme to that piece you just saw up on the screen that I did a couple months back. Something very like pink and purple and saturated. And then I just felt like it wasn't working. So you can see here, I changed it to blue and I changed the composition, and I made it so that the reflection pool was right in front of her, and moved her up high on the canvas. And I just was having such a hard time nailing down what felt right for this piece and what I wanted. And it honestly was so frustrating that at this point in the process, I actually wondered, like, should I just start over? Because sometimes that's actually easier. You can see here, I'm even trying to change her pose. But yeah, sometimes it's easier to just start over and it will float better. But at the same time, there were parts of this character that I really liked. I really liked kind of how her face looked. I liked generally how her body looked, and her pose was, I quite liked. There was some good things about it that I just didn't want to get rid of. And so I kind of continued to battle. And that's what it feels like sometimes, doesn't it? It kind of feels like a battle when you're getting through your art and it's not flowing like you want. But there are, aspects about some of these ideas that I like. I think this color scheme is actually okay, but once I decided to add a wolf, I suddenly decided, okay, I'm gonna make this piece feel a little bit more ominous. Maybe not ominous, but a little bit closer to something that would be in like, a dark fairy tale inspired, kind of continuing on the theme that I've been on with the last piece that I did, of like kind of these dark fairy tale vibes. And honestly, it was looking at that last piece and realizing, oh, I was so happy with that piece that why don't I just try to continue in that same vein and take some inspiration. It's not going to be exactly the same, obviously, but it's okay to kind of reuse aspects from your previous artwork. If it worked well, why not, right? Why do double work for something that worked well? So that's kind of what I decided for this piece. And then it was finally at this point, especially as I started adding in this hatching to the wolf, because I think the hatching gives such a nice like storybook feel sort of texture. to a wolf like this that I felt, okay, this piece is finally kind of working. And it took that far into the process for me to finally feel like, okay, finally we have something that's working. And that's just how it is sometimes. And I guess the lesson is to trust the process. Maybe, but still there's some changes that happen. I felt like her hair and everything was a little bit too static now that the wolf was like kind of swooshing in behind her, so I had to go in and redo line art and stuff for her hair. And man, there's just so much about this piece that needed like redoing. It was not a very straightforward process, and sometimes art is just not a straightforward process, which is why sometimes it's hard to do step-by-steps, which is kind of hilarious because I'm specifically making a step-by-step tutorial for this piece to go into that book that I talked about. But that's a whole other thing. Anyway, once I got to this piece, it felt like there was a huge pop of red and we needed to balance it out a little bit. So that's why I added in the swooshing fabric that goes around the wolf. Also just kind of adds more movement and better composition to the whole piece. And then figuring out the background. And again, I kind of took inspiration from the previous piece that I did because I like how that like gnarly forest background turned out. So I kind of just took that idea and just did it again in this piece. And so I guess the lesson there is reuse work that you've already done if you need to. That's okay. But once we're here, it's really starting to feel like it's coming together because we have more of the shading in, and now it's kind of about refining, because since this process required so many changes and was quite messy, I felt like there was a fair bit in this piece that had to be cleaned up. And even though it's still not like the cleanest piece, even at the end, I feel like it was fine. We just had to clean up some areas, like the fabric was so roughly painted in before. And then with the wolf, you may notice that I put a little outline around his head with a gray, and that's just to try and help the wolf's head stand out from his body, because I did not want his head to get lost in the body, which is easy to do with something like a big black or gray wolf. You could just lose that head. And then same with her antlers. I felt like they were fading too much into the wolf, so I had to kind of fade out the back of the wolf. And it also helps with making the wolf feel bigger when you do that, because it feels like the wolf is the hind butt and legs and stuff of the wolf are far away from you because then into the mist, so they're kind of fading back. And it also helps with separating her antler from the body of the wolf. But it ended up okay, I think, despite the crazy journey of so many different changes in this piece, and starting with a completely different concept, different colors, different everything. We ended up in this place that I'm pretty happy with, and I hope that you guys like how it turned out and this little commentary about the process. It felt like a really rushed commentary, but that's kind of how it is with speed paints. Anyway, I hope you guys have a wonderful day. If you are struggling with the piece, know that you are not the only one who struggles and has to make a bunch of changes to a piece to make it work sometimes. That happens to me all the time. You just watched the process and you got this. Sometimes you have to start over, but sometimes you can make it work and just trust the process. And don't be afraid to, if something worked well in your previous artwork, don't be afraid to reuse that, because why not use it if it worked well? Anyway, have a wonderful day. Happy drawing, guys.